to join us and hear about ransomware and cybersecurity, the risks that are out there, and most importantly, what you can do to mitigate these risks. As Michael had mentioned, I'm Eric Torres, Director of Channel Development. I've been doing this for over 6 years now. I'm one of the Datto's evangelists. I get to travel pre-COVID, got to travel all over the world and learning from people, finding out what concerns them when it comes to cybersecurity and data in their businesses. And then I get to bottle all of that up and share it with the masses, which is what we're doing here today. A brief intro to Datto ourselves. We are the world's leading provider of business continuity solutions. We are a global company. We were founded in 2007 and have expanded since then to 24 offices worldwide and even more data centers with strategically placed data centers based on varying laws of the global market. Rest assured, for all of the data that is stored and backed up in the US, it stays within our border. None of our data leaves borders, which I know comes into a lot of compliance rules and regulations that we adhere to. We are backing up, I do need to update the slide, it is over 1 million small to medium-sized businesses, all through the experts like Silicon Plains. They're the ones that build these beautiful networks. We're just simply one of the tools they use to make sure that that network is always up, always running, if and when something bad does happen. So we are talking about the cyber threats that happen to business. Ransomware, it's prevalent, it's running rampant. And quite frankly, we're never going to be able to stop it. And we've all heard the news stories. This is starting to become, it's almost a weekly occurrence where we hear of these major attacks. Recently, we had the Colonial Pipeline. We all saw the pictures. People running to gas stations, filling in Tupperware tubs full of gas. And this attack started by a phishing scam, a phishing email, got somebody to click on a link and expose the network. And this one, they did pay the ransom. They got a lot of it back. Last I had read, it was just over 4 million. They recouped somehow. They haven't released how they did it, but these are real world examples. And these are the things that hit the news. When COVID first became mainstream news a year and a half ago, we saw an increase on the attacks at hospitals. These bad guys have absolutely zero morals. They knew that hospitals were under the stress of all the patients and being overrun, and they took their chance at that. These are the stories that make the headline news, but this is happening much more prevalent. The stories that we aren't hearing about. Here's one that I picked up not all that long ago. This story was an allergy center, a small allergy clinic in North Carolina, 20 employees. They got hit, but what stood out to me is that this is the largest ask that I've seen of a small to medium-sized business. 1.75 million was the ransomware ask. Usually, for years, as I've been involved with ransomware and doing research on this, it's normally about 30 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand. Now we're getting into 1 million plus attacking a small business and holding their information for ransom. The reason why is because of the kind of data. Once these bad guys knew the kind of data that they had encrypted, that's what made it even more valuable to them, because that data and compliance laws and HIPAA and that forced that company to either pay, restore from a business continuity solution, or have to go to the media and go to their client base and let them know, okay, we've been breached and here's what it means. So the thing to note is this: I've got 1 million of these stories and 1 million scary ransomware stories, but the fact is this: we are under attack, plain and simple, all of us. Every single industry, the top industry that are targeted, and some of you on this call, maybe in some of these healthcare, as I mentioned, with attacking hospitals, attacking anybody that has healthcare records, because that is important. That is worth more to these criminals. Governments, we've seen the past 3 years, government and municipalities getting attacked. Atlanta, Baltimore, New Orleans. We're even seeing small town sheriff's offices and things like that. Water treatment facilities, those are now getting attacked. Colleges, universities all over North America have been in the crosshairs for quite some time. Even technology providers, and I don't want to omit this, being in this industry, they're looking at us as well. They know that we have methods of getting into customers' networks and taking care of these networks. So it becomes imperative that even ourselves at Datto and Silicon Plains that we adhere to the most strict guidelines when it comes to staying safe, ultimately to keep you all and your networks safe. And then lastly, rounding this out, professional services is on the rise. These are architecture firms, CPA firms, law firms, all of these types of organizations and verticals that have very important data, blueprints, accounting information, tax information. I just gave this presentation 2 weeks ago to a CPA firm, and I had 6 different stories of CPA firms getting attacked. It's even more so on the legal side of it. Once you start getting into law, the law side and law firms, they're getting attacked left and right. So we are all in the crosshairs. Now, why professional services? It's as simple as this, as I mentioned, targets that provide a useful cache of useful data. This data is not just gold to them because they can encrypt it and hold it hostage, but what we're also seeing is this data getting pushed out on the dark web. Then now that they have that data, they're actually selling it, especially CPA firms. If there's anybody in here with access to any kind of banking information, that is sold on the dark web almost instantly, as soon as they get it, as soon as they get their hands on it, because that's just more recurring revenue for them. They're going out there and they're selling it multiple times over and over, selling that sensitive information. Let's also face it, a lot of times these smaller organizations lack that robust cybersecurity defense. They're outsourcing a lot of their ways. They're outsourcing a lot of their CPA needs, their legal needs, their HR needs, their IT needs, and that's even more why you need somebody like Silicon Plains in there, keeping an eye on the network and say, yes, here's what we do to keep it safe, and here's what we have on the backside if you do happen to get ransomware. And we also have seen that data is hosted in a number of different locations. And I cannot stress this enough, that you have to be very careful with how you're storing data, where you're storing data, and even transferring data. I had a story the other day. I met with some lawyers, and they actually advised me to take a picture of something. They advised one of their clients take a picture of something and then text it to them. And I'm just thinking, you have no idea who's able to see that, where that picture lives. I mean, just think about iCloud and Google Photos. Where does that actually bounce around to after that's saved? And this makes you the worry about being compliant ever so much more top of mind. You have to remain compliant and know exactly where your data is living. Now, if you look at some of the biggest breaches, the biggest healthcare breach of 2020 last year actually came through a CPA firm. This was an organization that they outsourced their accounting to this company, and the attack lasted for 3 days, which may not seem like that long, but that is a ton of downtime. Imagine being without your network for 3 full days. Would your business be able to survive? And the thing with this is that they didn't release this information right away. That was another one of the breaches. That's another one of that left them vulnerable. The CPA firm did not let people know. They tried to cover their tracks at first, which made this even worse. So how often is a business in America being hit with ransomware? I've got a ton of stats, and I don't want to waste your time going through these stat by stat. I'm just going to shoot right to that bottom. How often is it happening? Every 13 seconds. Every 13 seconds, a business in the US is hit with ransomware. That's a business of any size. They're attacking you no matter what you do. You could be a manufacturing company. You could be a dental office, a chiropractor. We even have cases of dog walkers that have gotten attacked. True story, a dog walker had her system infected with ransomware and attacked a one-person organization that walks dogs. Like, that's all she does, and she was attacked. It is so prevalent that our Department of Treasury actually in Q4 of last year released a bulletin saying that they are actually considering making it a felony to pay the ransom. Just a few short weeks ago, our FBI director, 3 weeks ago, was testifying to Congress saying, on the floor, saying, please do not tell people to pay the ransom, because essentially what you are doing, you are funding terrorist organizations. We have been able to trace this back to a few known nation states that have it out for the U.S. And what essentially you are doing by paying the ransom is you're funding terrorist organizations. And in due time, paying the ransom will become illegal. This will be no different than paying the ransom on a number of different other things that are ransom, be it a kidnapping or things of that nature. In order to understand the risk and how to mitigate the risk, you first have to understand the internet and what it really looks like. Where you and I live, where we get our news, where we do our shopping, where we have our social media, that's the surface web. That's what we're in every single day. Below that, that's behind a lock and key. That's your medical records, academic records, financial records, your databases that are secured. Then below that, that's the dark web. And I went on the dark web once. It was an engineer of mine that showed me how to do it, and I was curious and showed me exactly how to get out, how to be safe. But it is a dark and scary place. You can literally find anything you want. If you add up the deep in the dark web, that accounts for 96% of all web traffic. Think about that. Think about how much we're out there and we're doing, getting our news and shopping and all of that. That's only 4% of the web. So that's how vast this digital universe is. Now let's talk about the cyber threats that are out there. And who are these threat groups? Who are these people that are attacking us? Well, one are the ransomware developers. These are and I'll even say it, these are the brilliant minds that create this bad code. And they're getting better and better at hiding it, at evolving it. I've got stories about how even one strain of ransomware evolves into something completely different over months and over years of time as it's out there tracing its way around the world. And I will also share with you this. These are full-on organizations. These are not a lone wolf in their parents' basement that is out there writing code and deploying ransomware. Yes, there are those that are out there, but we're talking full-blown companies that have customer service departments to help make it easier to pay them the ransom. There's even a selling aspect where they're selling this ransomware out on the dark web. You and I can log in and go purchase ransomware. So there's a whole sales division within these companies. These are full-blown organized crime syndicates. Another thing that we looked at very closely in the past 18 months, insider threats. Due to COVID, a number of companies had to tighten their belts and furlough people, lay people off, cut back on hours. What we saw was an uptick in disgruntled employees, somebody with an axe to grind. And we actually caught, it was Datto along with some good vendor industry friends of ours, Huntress, but we actually caught a person trying to sell their credentials to the network on the dark web. They're trying to sell their credentials. So insider threats, purposely leaving a door open, working with somebody else saying, hey, there's a way that you can deploy ransomware. Let me in on the take. This is on the rise as well. I mentioned that how organized they are. Believe me when I say organized crime has their hands in this. Anytime that there is money exchanging hands at this pace, at this dollar amount, best believe that organized crime has their hands in this. I also mentioned nation states. There's a couple of them that stand out. There's even in the news this week where the White House came out and said that certain nations, they have now proof that they are behind some of these major attacks that are happening. Again, going back to that thought of you are helping terrorist organizations by paying the ransom. And then the last thing that I personally am keeping a very close eye on is, and I hate using industry buzzwords, but the Internet of Things, IoT. And I just think of my own house. I'm at my house today. I'm usually on the road. All of the connected devices that are in my own home, and the world shifted to work remotely, work from anywhere, and that mentality is, I think, here to stay, where you'll go into the office part of the week or home or working on the weekends and from home or even at night, where think of all the devices in your own homes and maybe even in some of your businesses that connect to the network. My home network, I've got my doorbells, I've got my locks on my doors, my security system, my camera system on the outside of my house. I had to turn off Alexa. Alexa runs everything. She runs my TV, my sound system, my lights, and all of this just introduces vulnerabilities, especially as you're working from home, if you're not locked down in a safe work from home or work from anywhere environment. So how are they attacking? How are the bad guys getting in? Quite frankly, it's mostly in some very unsophisticated ways. There is password cracking tools that are out there, brute force. And what these cracking tools do is they try, literally, it's billions of passwords very quickly, just over and over and over and over, trying to get some of those basic passwords. A number combination, a number letter combination. And let's face it, we've all heard those stories. The number one password is password 123. These password crackers are taking it much further than that and just trying any kind of passwords at various lengths. And this software, it's very easy to buy on the dark web. You can get this for $19.99. You can go buy a password cracker on the dark web. And these bad guys are using it. They're deploying it on the network and getting access that way. Another method that they're using to get into a network is password managers. The first place, there's two places that an attacker looks at usually when they get into a network. They're first, if they're doing it through ransomware and locking down data, they're looking for your backups. They're trying to encrypt your backups as well, or delete your backups. Second place they look are your browsers. Are your passwords stored in your browser? I know many of us on this call right now have our passwords stored in your browser. It's just human nature. We want to do what's easy. We want to do what's fastest for us. We don't want to have to remember all those passwords. Well, that's the first place they look. And oftentimes these browsers, they're not as secure as other options that are out there. Silicon Plains, they can recommend there are robust password managers that are in use. I know I use one. There's several of them that are out there. Datto actually provided us with one for our business use and then one for our personal use as well. But there are robust encrypted password management systems in place, multi-factor authentication. So please do not keep your passwords saved in your browsers. Another thing is another method of attacking is called credential stuffing. What this is they are looking for old passwords that are already out there on the dark web, out there for sale in the market, and then applying those passwords through software packages, through technology into various institutions. So maybe it's grabbing, let's say, for example, your work password happens to be on the dark web for sale somewhere. What they're doing is they're taking that combination, first initial, last name, your password, and applying it to just about every bank that's out there, every credit card that's out there, anything they can find. And they're doing this at a massive approach, just trying to see if anything hits. So be very leery of where you're storing your passwords, how your passwords are done, and not using a method that keeps them pretty hard to crack, but also changing your passwords frequently, because this becomes important. That if they get one of your passwords, chances are, if you're like me, you've got the same password for a lot of the different instances that you're using it for. And then the number one way that they are getting into networks, it's phishing. And this, unfortunately, we can't stop either. It's because, again, human nature. And what they're doing is they're just waiting and tempting you to click on a link, click on a document, click on an attachment, and embedded in that is their code. So How do you spot a phishing email? And I'm sure you guys are aware, we all get these emails. There's a number of different things, and I'll send out this slide deck. If you guys want this slide deck, we can certainly share this out. But how do you spot a phishing email? There's a number of different things to look at. The sender, the email address. Look at that email address. If it's generic, if it's a weird off email address, chances are you don't want to click on anything in that. There's also a number of different things they put in the header of the email, like right up on top, that it just doesn't look like an email that somebody would send. It looks more like a business letter. It just looks off. It looks, I hate to say it, looks foreign. It looks like somebody who doesn't interact with you normally is sending you some information, and chances are that is a bad actor. And then you start looking at the grammar itself. How is it written? Especially the way that they're doing this now, where they're hiding it. They'll get into your email, and they'll know that you're working with somebody or sending it. They'll send it from somebody spoofed as even within your own organization. Just take a look at that grammar and say, hey, that's not how that person talks. Or the email signature, overly generic. Maybe a name, maybe even not a name, but just saying, hey, thank you, and then the company name. If anything, if you're dealing with any kind of financial records, any critical information, just reach out to the company that's emailing you, that you're doing business with, and ask. It doesn't hurt to pick up the phone call and say, hey, I got this email, is it legit? That lets you know, that lets them know that you're serious about security and that you're always on the lookout for it. Another thing to look at is the hyperlinks, and you can type anything you want into what that hyperlink looks like. And here's an example of that. It's an irs.gov email address with a bunch of numbers after it and letters. That looks like, at first glance, that looks like a legit link. Like, okay, that's from the irs.gov. That's got to be good, right? But then if you actually hover over that link and see where it's actually going to, it's completely different. It's not that link. So don't just look at that link and say, yeah, that looks legit. Hover over it. Do not click on it. Hover over it and say, okay, where is this really going? And again, if anything, what I would do if I see something like this from the IRS, I'd call that number. And I would talk to them and maybe even call a second number, because if they've got this posted here, chances are they themselves are going to answer it, and then come up with some reason to get you to click on that link. Here's some fun of my own inbox. This is an email that came through to me back last month, June 11th. This came through, and this came through from exactly admin. Not sure what this is, but it even has a Datto email address inside of it. Elizabeth Porter, ePorter@Datto. That's our naming convention. We're a 2,000 person company. So I'm looking at this going, I've never met an Elizabeth Porter. I don't know what exactly is. And it's asking me about a logon to something, and to click on this. And right away I look on our intranet and I'm looking for an Elizabeth Porter. There is no Elizabeth Porter@Datto. And right away it stood out to me saying, this is not legit. Something's up with this one. Here's another example that came through to me. Over 30 days due. That's the subject line. Right away, I'm like, yeah, this is phishing. There's no way that any organization would simply put that in the subject line and say, dear customer. This one stood out right away to me. Thankfully, on this one as well, our systems caught it. This one had a PDF, and embedded in that PDF was indeed some malicious code that was embedded into that. All I had to do was open that PDF, and I would have infected our network. Here's one that caught me by surprise. I bank at Wells Fargo. I'm here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and bank at Wells Fargo, and it says my Wells Fargo account was locked. And right away, I'm like, what are you talking about? And I start looking at this email, and there's something in this email that just wasn't quite right, and I spotted it almost instantly. And that's right there on top, spelling Fargo wrong. That's what these bad guys will do. They'll invert 2 letters or a simple spelling mistake somewhere in how they're sending it out. That's all they need to do. And unfortunately, a lot of us we fall victim to it, and we end up clicking on some of these links. So what happens when you do click? You guessed it. I'd say 9 times out of 10, it's a ransomware attack, either instantly or it's going to sit dormant, spread throughout the network, and then they flip a switch, and one day you'll come to your email and you'll see this message right here. Your data's been encrypted. There'll be a countdown timer. Here's how to pay me. Again, these are full-blown organizations with customer service departments that will even help you and walk you through how to pay them. So it's obvious, ransomware is king. Quite frankly, we are never going to be able to stop it. So the whole title of today's presentation, that's the wrong question to ask, is how do I stop it? It's all about having a backup solution in place, a business continuity solution in place, that if you do get ransomware, you know exactly what to do. Your business will not get affected by it, and you'll be back up and running in no time. Downtime is costing businesses billions and billions of dollars, 75 billion just in North America alone on small to medium-sized businesses. Quite frankly, I think this number's way off. This is just what's reported to the authorities. How many small businesses have gotten hit with ransomware that didn't want it getting out to anybody and did not report it to the authorities, did not tell anybody, and simply paid it in hopes of getting their data back? What it all comes down to is this: people are your greatest risk. People are the ones that click on these links, go to the wrong websites, open the wrong PDFs and Word documents and attachments in an email, and clicking on the wrong things. We don't want this to happen. Ultimately, Silicon Plains and Datto, we want you to stay protected. There are a number of different layers of staying protected. We put it into 3 different buckets. Your first one being your people, and getting that training out, informing people what we've gone through today, what to look for, what to spot, even training on where to store documentation, where to store files, how to access the network when remote. What if you're in a hotel? What if you're at a coffee shop? How are you connecting to that critical data, and even your home environments? What about the security at home? Silicon Plains has a fantastic way of helping get you and your people safe and secure, trained and tested, and make sure that they are doing the right things, saving the right documentation in the right places, and connecting in a safe and secure manner. The second aspect we look at is the process. Having that defined process of what happens if my building catches on fire? What happens if my server goes down? I have a hardware failure. What happens if I do get ransomware? Does your organization know who you're calling, how fast you're getting back up and running, what's the next step, how to shut everybody out of the network? Is that documented? Is the staff aware of exactly what happens when you push that button and say code red, we got ransomware, everybody off the network? Having all of this documented is also something Silicon Plains can help you with when it comes to building out that full-scale disaster recovery business continuity solution. And then the last aspect of this is the technology, which is my role in today, aside from scaring you guys with all these stories, but to talk about mitigating these risks through technology. I mentioned some key words and as far as security with physical security, multi-factor authentication when you're logging into systems, your endpoint protection, that security wall, but also the data security. You could have the best security wall in front of you, but you also better have a B plan for in case something gets through that. And that's what Datto is, through the power of Silicon Plains. Now, I meet with a lot of business owners, both in my pre-Datto days and now with Datto. And I used to hear this all the time. I've got a great backup solution. Our data's already in the cloud. That's great. Your data's off-site. But is it a backup solution or is it business continuity? Because there is a clear-cut difference. If there's anything you take away from our time here together today, it's this. The difference between backup and business continuity is quite simple. Backup just means your data is living elsewhere. That's it. You've got a copy of that data. Anybody can provide you with a backup solution. You could walk in with a hard drive, store your data on a drive, and take it off anywhere else. That's a backup solution, technically. Business continuity is saying, if I go down, how fast can I get back up and running? How fast can I restore from that? The easiest way I can explain this to you is this. Business continuity is rewinding the hands of time. If something bad happens, let's just go back to 5 minutes before that bad thing happened. Let's act like it didn't happen. We can do that through technology. We can bring those networks back online 5 minutes before ransomware happened, 5 minutes before the building caught on fire, 5 minutes before I accidentally spilled coffee on my laptop. We know that ransomware is running rampant. Quite frankly, as I said, we're not going to be able to stop it, but Silicon Plains is doing something about it. They provide you with true business continuity, and I don't want to get technical, but for my mind, I'm a sales marketing guy. For my mind, in order to understand technology, I need to see it in a picture. So here's what my brilliant marketing department put together for me to help me comprehend of what this technology really does. On the left side here is your critical business systems. These are your servers, be it physical servers, virtual servers, your workstations, your laptops for your road warriors, working from remote, working from anywhere. This is where you're conducting your day-to-day business. Through Silicon Plains, what we have, and Cirrus is the brand name solution of our hardware and virtual appliance, but what we have is a backup appliance that backs up as little as every 5 minutes. And our technology in that backup is doing certain things. We are doing a test on every single device, every single night to make sure it's a solid backup. There's no longer a worry of having to test your data once a week or once a month. We're doing it through our technology every single night, every single device, automatically. And what we're doing is we're actually able to look for specific applications. If you have a business application that you want to check every single night to make sure that the processes are running correctly, we can build that right into the backup and say, I want to check this every single night and make sure it's up and running. We've also built in ransomware detection. This is not your security layer, as I mentioned. This is saying on the backside, if ransomware made it through your security layer, our system picks it up. We're able to compare different moments in time and say, from that last backup 5 minutes ago till right now, something's not quite right. There may be a footprint of ransomware in here, and then we'll let Silicon Plains know, hey, there's something not quite right, and raise a red flag saying, in that last backup set from 5 minutes ago, go look at that because something seems off. Now, we also have the ability to virtualize in a matter of seconds. What that means is from our on-prem device, the on-premise server, be it virtual or physical, if you have a server outage, if your workstation goes down, you blow out a motherboard, what we do is we just virtualize from our device, and I'll turn my server into your laptop. I'll turn my server into your server, and I'll get you back up and running literally in seconds. I can get a laptop back up and running in 6 seconds. That's how fast our technology works. We take it a step further from there. We're sending it to 2 different data centers automatically, every single backup we're taking. Our primary data center on the East Coast, and then that data center gets replicated to the West Coast. So at all moments in time, you've got 4 copies of your data itself, the data that's living on our device, and then the data in our 2 data centers. But we also take it a step further in saying we have the ability to virtualize from our data center. So I'll run you through a scenario. You're working, and for whatever reason, you can no longer work. Let's just say you get ransomware. What we do is we go to the on-site device, and we spin up an exact same image of your workstation, of your server, of your network, saying, okay, here's now this new safe virtual network that you and your staff are going to work from. The benefits of this is it reduces downtime. As I said, we can bring back a workstation in a matter of seconds, a server, depending on the role of that server and the processing power that it has, a matter of a few minutes to an hour or so. We can do this from our local device or from our data center. If you have an entire building that goes up in flames, we just spin up your entire network from our data center and then give you access to it, saying, okay, while your building's getting rebuilt, this is now how you're connecting. And it has everything you're used to connecting with and used to working with. All of your files, your folders, your applications, your desktop background, your shortcuts, your kids' pictures, the music that you listen to while you're working, all of it is saved and stored so that you can get back to work just as you're used to working on a daily basis. Now, I hate using industry buzzwords, and I'm going to use some right here. It helps with your RTO and RPO. What that stands for is recovery time objective and recovery point objective. Basically, that is how far backwards in time are you going if you do lose your data, if you need to recover, and then how long could you be without your data? And essentially, what does all that cost? If you go down, what does it cost? And that is a key factor all of us need to think about and consider. What does downtime cost my business? Not just the ransom ask, if you do get hit with ransomware, but overall downtime, lost productivity, lost if you are in professional services, and if you don't have the ability to invoice your customers, everybody's locked out. What does that truly mean for your business? We know that downtime costs are skyrocketing. Just over the past 2.5 years, we've seen almost 500% increase. That's taking into account rebuilding the networks. That's taking into account more often than not new hardware, forensic investigation on how it happened, preventing it from happening again. Depending on your business, you may have consultants you need to pay for. You may have a PR firm that you need help. You may have lawyers involved that you may need to look at and say, I have sensitive data. What do we do? I need to let my customers know. There are so many moving parts to consider when you do get breached, when there is that downtime to think about. Now, what you have the ability to do is through Silicon Plains and through Datto, what we have built is a downtime cost calculator. And it's 10 simple questions. This is purely an estimate, but in a matter of a couple minutes, less than 5 minutes, we can help estimate what an hour's worth of downtime costs your business. What we do is we run through a series of questions about your business, about the data, how much data you have, how many employees you have, what's the average wage of those employees, overhead costs, things like that. Where are you storing your data? What's your current backup solution? And you enter this information into this 10-question calculator, and you hit calculate, and it paints the picture for you. Your current situation versus the situation if and when you're working with Silicon Plains and you have a Datto unit in there and you have that true business continuity. So for all of this, I cannot stress this enough. Have a second set of eyes in your network. You may have an IT department. You may have a trusted service provider that you love working with. My recommendation is reach out to the great folks at Silicon Plains. They are the experts in doing this, and just get that needs assessment, security system audit, that second set of eyes saying, hey, I am on the right path, or here's some holes that we found in the network. Or if you want to access the downtime cost calculator, just shoot them a quick email. I'm sure they'll be following up after this presentation, but sales@siliconplains.com. And on behalf of Silicon Plains and Datto, I just want to thank you for your time. I know it's getting harder and harder to get people's attention on all these virtual events and webinars and things like that. So we appreciate it. And again, that email address is sales@siliconplains.com. And with that, Michael, parting shots and any questions that are coming up.
Sure. Well, first off, the email address should be sales@siliconplains.net. But you know, we got to have a typo somewhere in the presentation. You know, oh well, that's all right. That's all right. You know, and really, you can reach out to your account manager, either Mike Hamron or myself, and we'll be happy to walk you through anything. A lot of this stuff is stuff that we do go over in quarterly business reviews that we have with our managed service clients as well. So if you haven't had a business review for a while, or you have questions about anything that you saw today, absolutely reach out to Mike or I, and we'll make sure that we get you on the right path. We did have a handful of questions come through. If anybody has any additional questions, click the chat button there on the top. It's the little bubble that looks like a cartoon kind of message from a comic book. And this is what I have for questions. Some of these questions you did go over already, but I think, you know, either way, they're probably ones that could use, reinforcing, if nothing else, because they're kind of the critical things I think a lot of these questions are. So we got a question earlier, and I hear this question all the time. As a small business owner, am I really a target?
Yeah, the fact of the matter is, what we're seeing is this: there's very targeted approaches, those are the ones that go after the colonial pipelines, the government organizations, things like that. And then there's a shotgun approach that literally what they're doing is they're scouring anything for email addresses. LinkedIn. I could go to most people's LinkedIn profile, figure out where they work, come up with a naming convention for your company, first initial, last name at acmecompany.com, and just blast it with a number of different phishing emails across the entire company, and chances are somebody's going to click on something.
Right, right, and you know, and I'll add to that a little bit as well, in that, you know, you look at some of these major organizations like a Colonial Pipeline or Solar Winds or organizations like that. They have hundreds of dedicated, or even the military, they have hundreds of dedicated employees that are working every minute of every day to try to prevent this kind of stuff from happening. So from a small business from a small business owner perspective, you don't have the resources allocated to put that kind of infrastructure behind your protection, and that's part of the reason that you know, we help out small business owners like that as well. So next question, and you touched on this as well, but it's kind of a 2-for-1. Where are your data centers located, and what kind of redundancy do you have in place? I think that was covered kind of in that one slide really well, but the question probably came in before that. So
yeah, great question. We have the exact cities. It's Allentown, Pennsylvania. That's on the East Coast. And then by design, we wanted something on the other side of the country, Salt Lake City, Utah. It is redundant, meaning everything that's on the East Coast gets replicated to the West Coast. As far as protection within the data centers ourselves, we are supporting governments, we're supporting financial institutions, healthcare organizations. We have to adhere to all of their compliances, and we're constantly providing documentation, paperwork, audits of our data centers to make sure that we're compliant. And there's new rules coming down almost monthly, and even some of these compliance laws go state by state. So we have to adhere to all of it.
Okay. Another question that came in, and I think this is really and another one you touched on. How long would it take for you to get us back up and running? That's maybe not a fair question, just at a general scope, but
yeah. So there's something we've worked very hard on over the years, as far as the technology ourselves. So it's not just about recovering. We can virtualize and get a system back up and running in a matter of seconds if it's a laptop, a workstation. Servers take a little bit more time, minutes to a couple hours, depending on exactly what that server is doing. But it's also about, even after we're running virtually, how do we get back to production environment? How do we get back to, let's say that your building burnt down, now we rebuild a new building. What about bringing all of that back over? We've designed our technology that it's as little as rebooting a system can get a server back online. So we pride ourselves in confidently saying, we are one of the fastest, if not the fastest, way to get your data back.
Okay. Another question that came in, just wondering how financials didn't make your list of top targets.
Well, I put the financials, to me, are involved in professional services. As far as like the banking industry and things like that, we just lump them all together as far as our surveys that we put out there.
Okay. Another question. You talked about ransomware, and it's in the news every day. How do you protect your systems from attack when you're one of those targeted things, organizations, verticals?
Yeah, we're constantly seeing. I just got a phishing email this morning. We're testing ourselves, first of all. That goes with the people training aspect of it. And I know you guys have different systems in place where you do this as well. So we're constantly testing our own selves, and I'd never want to be on the naughty list of opening and clicking on the wrong email. Outside of that, our technology itself, we have an extremely robust security team that is one of the best in the industry, that is constantly, they have different sections of the team. Some of them are constantly intentionally trying to break into our own products. Some of them are looking for holes. We also have a bounty system on our technology where others can actually make money if they find bugs and flaws within our technology. It's not often that we actually find anything, but others are out there actively, and we encourage them to look at it. And these are the ethical hackers that are out there. But again, working with governments, financial institutions, healthcare, we have to be on our P's and Q's.
Okay. Here's a question that just came in. Who are your main competitors, and what differentiates Datto from everybody else?
Normally, I don't mention our competitors in a presentation. There are a number of the larger ones that you may have heard of. See the billboards. I see ads for them in airports all the time. The giant ones that are out there. I'll name a few right here. The Barracudas, Veeams, things like that. The differences being though are this. They're built for the enterprise. They're not built for small to medium-sized businesses. They're not built for where we live and play. Our solutions will go up to enterprise size, but they're built to go to an IT department and sell an IT department a solution. And we're saying, no, that's not the right thing. We need to help protect that 5-person company, that 2-person company, that 100-person company, and do it in a cost-effective manner. And I'd say the number one competitive advantage we have, we've got it all. We've got the software, the hardware, and the data center, and everything that's involved in that, the security. Whereas a lot of those other solutions, you're piecemealing it together, where they're coming to you saying, here's the software, now you go get your hardware, now you go get your data center. Suddenly you got a lot of fingers pointing at each other if something goes wrong.
Right. This is a question more for, looks like more for me, but says, as a Silicon Plains client, are we protected by Datto, or is that an additional service? And right now, the majority of our customers, to be honest, are on a straight backup solution, not a complete business continuity plan. That's definitely something that that we need to have conversations about, and it's something that we're definitely moving forward towards getting everybody over to a complete business continuity solution, as opposed to the old school straight backup solutions that have kind of been around a long time. And the problem is, that used to be enough. And as these things are getting more sophisticated, and attacks are getting more sophisticated, and different things like that, we need to step up our game as well. And I don't know if you have anything to add to that as well, Eric.
Yeah, I've got a story that comes to mind as you were sharing that. Prior to me joining Datto, I worked for a managed service provider, much like Silicon Plains here in Milwaukee, and I'm in sales and marketing. And I go back into my bullpen of engineers, and I said, hey guys, I'm meeting with a potential customer. I need a story about Datto. I knew we were selling Datto. I knew how to sell it. I said, I need a story about Datto where we really saved the day. We came in and we saved this business, and they all started laughing at me. And I'm like, all right, guys, what's going on? And they were like, well, we had 2 of our servers suffer a major disaster internal at the managed service provider I was working at. 2 of our servers went out. None of us even knew. And none of us in leadership roles even knew that we went down. That's how fast they got us back up and running. And that is the speed at which the data still moved around. And I was like, what do you mean that we're down and we're running virtually? They're like, nobody even noticed. We're fixing this, and we're doing it in the background while work continues. So that's what you're getting with Datto. And that, when I use that and to talk to that after I went to that meeting, I just said, hey, look, we're using this ourselves, and here's exactly what it's doing for us.
Yep. So, all right. If anybody has any other questions, speak now. Or contact your account manager later, and we'll still help you. So, all right. Well, we're kind of coming up to the end of our time here anyway. So I just wanted to thanks again, Eric, for taking the time to really help us out and
Sure.
make sure that everybody had the opportunity to hear all that information. It was great information. I mean, even for me, and I'm in the industry, that there's a lot of things that you went over there that
Sure.
are really key factors that need to be considered. So with that, I thank you for your time. Thanks everybody for joining us. We are planning to do these kind of webinars on a monthly basis. So watch your emails. We will be sending out recording of this webinar and information on future webinars. So if you want to be added to a list or anything, let me know that as well. And thanks everybody for coming out. So
Thank you all. Thanks for having me. Take care.
all right. Thank you.